1st September 1939, as German tanks thundered across the Polish border and Europe plunged into the abyss of World War II, an invisible war was already underway, fought not with bullets and bombs but with secret codes, clandestine radios, and the unwavering courage of men and women hidden in the very heart of Nazi Germany. This is the story of the Red Orchestra Russia-S deep-cover spy network that infiltrated Hitler's regime from within, a secret intelligence machine so effective, so extensive, and so feared by the Gestapo that its name still echoes with both admiration and terror. Imagine living in a world where every whispered conversation could be your last, where one wrong step meant torture, execution, or a fate far worse. Yet these spies, artists, diplomats, factory workers, soldiers, anti-fascist Germans, idealistic Soviets, and even high-ranking insiders risked everything to expose Nazi secrets and tilt the course of the war. Today we peel back the layers of this extraordinary espionage saga, how the Red Orchestra formed, how it operated under the noses of Hitler's most ruthless hunters, how it provided intelligence that shaped battles across Europe, and how it ultimately paid the highest price. The Red Orchestra, Rote Kapelle, as the Gestapo dubbed it, was never a single centralized organization, but rather a constellation of spy rings operating in Germany, Belgium, France, Switzerland, and the Netherlands. The Nazi nickname was cruelly mocking, implying that the network's members were like musicians playing for Moscow. In reality, the orchestra was composed of individuals from wildly different backgrounds united by one thing: the determination to resist fascism. Its origins trace back to the early 1930s as Adolf Hitler tightened his grip on the German state. Among the earliest architects of resistance was Harro Schulze-Boysen, a charismatic and fiercely intelligent Luftwaffe officer who despised the regime from within. Likewise, Arvid Harnack, a respected economist with connections to both the US Embassy and anti-Nazi intellectual circles, quietly built a network of informants. Both men harboured deep moral and political opposition to Nazism, and both would become pivotal figures in the largest anti-Hitler German resistance cell of the war. While these homegrown dissidents gathered intelligence independently, Soviet intelligence through the GRU was forming its own vast spy apparatus throughout Europe. One of the most electrifying of these operatives was Leopold Trepper, a Polish-born Jewish communist and master organizer whose brilliance in tradecraft would make him one of the most successful spy masters in history. Under the cover of front companies, Trepper wove together networks of agents and couriers, using everything from fake business deals to encrypted radio transmissions to funnel intelligence to Moscow. When the German invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941 brought Hitler and Stalin into direct confrontation, the Soviets suddenly needed Trepper and the growing German resistance movement more than ever. Thus, loosely connected rings Harnack's circle in Berlin, Trepper's network in Western Europe, and the covert radios sprinkled throughout the continent became what the Nazis collectively labelled the Red Orchestra. These spies uncovered some of the most sensitive secrets of the Nazi state. In Berlin, Schulze-Boysen had access to Luftwaffe documents detailing German aircraft production, new weaponry, and strategic plans. Harnack, with his connections to foreign diplomatic circles, funneled information about Germany's economic planning and war preparations. Agents within the Foreign Office, the Ministry of Economics, military units, and industrial sectors passed along anything they could find. Troop movements, invasion schedules, railway timetables, industrial bottlenecks, and signs of internal Nazi conflict. Meanwhile, Trepper's network cracked into German communications in occupied Belgium and France, sending Moscow invaluable reports on submarine deployments, supply shortages, V-weapon research, and the changing moods of German commanders. One of the Red Orchestra's most significant contributions came before the most pivotal moment of the war, Operation Barbarossa, the German invasion of the Soviet Union. As early as late 1940, multiple members of the network sent warning after warning. Germany was preparing a massive assault on the USSR. They transmitted reports detailing troop concentrations, ammunition stockpiles, fuel depots, and the unmistakable build-up along the eastern frontier. Schulze-Boysen delivered an especially devastating memo predicting that the attack would come soon, and with overwhelming force. Trepper's agents confirmed the same. Yet, tragically, Stalin refused to believe any of it. He dismissed the warnings as provocations by the British or misinformation from rogue operatives. And so, when Barbarossa erupted on 22 June 1941, the Soviet Union was caught catastrophically off guard despite the Red Orchestra's efforts to prevent exactly that disaster. But the Red Orchestra did far more than issue warnings. Throughout 1941 and 1942, the network funneled a torrent of intelligence to Moscow. Reports on German tank production, aircraft losses, supply shortages and morale issues gave the Soviet High Command priceless strategic insights. During the crucial period leading to the Battle of Stalingrad, Red Orchestra operatives operating in Belgium and France intercepted German communications about logistical weaknesses, internal debates among Nazi leadership, and the deteriorating condition of German forces on the Eastern Front. These were not minor tips, they were high-value intelligence that helped shape Soviet strategies in some of the war's most decisive engagements. Of course, this level of espionage did not go unnoticed. The Gestapo, ever paranoid and relentless, began tightening its grip on every suspected radio transmitter in Germany and occupied Europe. They were obsessed with tracking so-called pianists, the radio operators, whose tapping Morse code messages played for Moscow. With advanced radio direction technology and brutal interrogation methods, the Gestapo gradually closed in. The first major breakthrough in their hunt came in 1941, when they intercepted suspicious radio signals originating from Brussels. This led them on the trail of Trepper's sprawling network. Arrests began, and under torture, some operatives gave up names or locations. The Gestapo followed these leads with chilling efficiency. By late 1942, the net had begun to close on both wings of the Red Orchestra. In Berlin, the Gestapo uncovered links between Schulze-Boysen, Harnack, and a growing list of anti-Nazi intellectuals, artists, and military officers. In a single sweep, dozens of suspects were taken. The interrogations were merciless. Many prisoners resisted until the end. Others, broken by months of torture, revealed fragments of information that sealed the fate of their comrades. Schulze-Boysen and Harnack were sentenced to death by the Reich's infamous People S Court, both executed in late 1942, their families persecuted for years afterward. The Berlin resistance cell was shattered. In Trepper's Western European network, the crackdown was equally brutal. Trepper himself managed one of the most astonishing escapes of the war, fleeing Gestapo custody and hiding until the liberation of Paris. But many of his operatives were executed, imprisoned, or deported to concentration camps. The Nazi propaganda machine seized on these arrests to portray the Red Orchestra as a monstrous Soviet conspiracy infesting German society. Posters, films, and newspaper stories painted the agents as traitors, spies, and criminals determined to destroy the German people. But the truth revealed only years later was far more complicated and far more heroic. Many members were not Soviet agents in the traditional sense, but Germans who loved their country enough to stand against a homicidal regime. They acted not for money or fame, but out of conscience, conviction, and moral outrage at the crimes unfolding around them. In the decades after the war, the legacy of the Red Orchestra became contested ground. In East Germany, the network was celebrated as a heroic communist resistance movement. In West Germany, Cold War politics cast suspicion over anything connected to Soviet espionage, leading to years of historical distortion and political discomfort. It was until the late 20th and early 21st centuries that scholars pieced together a fuller, more accurate picture, one that restored the dignity and complexity of the Red Orchestra's members. They were visionaries, idealists, rebels, and scholars. They were soldiers who betrayed their own commands for the sake of humanity. They were ordinary people placed in extraordinary circumstances who chose courage over fear. Today, the Red Orchestra stands as one of the most sophisticated and morally significant espionage networks of the Second World War. Its members provided life-saving intelligence, exposed the inner workings of the Nazi war machine, and demonstrated that even in a society gripped by terror, resistance was possible. Their sacrifices remind us that the fight against tyranny is not confined to front lines. It happens in offices, in secret meetings, in coded messages, in whispered conversations, in dimly lit rooms, and sometimes it happens in the heart of the enemy's own capital. The story of the Red Orchestra is not just a story of espionage. It is a story of humanity, at its strongest ordinary people standing up to extraordinary evil. It is a story of courage paid for with blood, of warnings ignored but truth preserved, of networks shattered yet legacies that endure. And above all, it is a story that asks us to imagine what we would do if confronted with the same choice. Stay silent or risk everything to strike back against the darkness.